Out of Cruel Space into a Wider Galaxy, Part 31, for Newest England. Well, that's one way to do it, Shelley remarks as Philip descends from above on an air cycle with a Tret woman wrapped around him. They're both dressed, but the line of hickeys she's left along his neck, coupled with the goofy smile on her face, tells an entire story. Good morning, ladies. I take it that you and your friend approve of my plan, Philip says with a decidedly cheery tone. I'm sorry, which one of you had the happy ending? Mutual, Philip says before pausing. Also, I had watched a fascinating bit of trivia on the local History Channel. Did you know that vehicles like this are generally called air mounts by the first few generations of an uplifted civilization? Most species don't have the technological base to understand a motorcycle, let alone an air cycle. I did not know that, Shelley says confused. Why the change of topic? Because the fact I was in position to learn it means that the Vatras are not quite at the level I want them yet. I need to keep poking this beast. Get it good and angry, Philip says casually. Oh, sweet goddess commander. You were right. He is crazy. One of the women states, and Philip chuckles. Miss Thornsaddle, in a crazy galaxy, it is the sane who are truly mad. Those who don't dare never do anything. Although it's good to see you're here as well. I take it you've traced my electronic record by now? Yes, Sir Masterson, we have. And we've seen the movies and their derivatives. Oh, good Lord. You do know they're based on and not accurate to my actual missions, I trust? Philip asks. So you did not, in fact, have a gunfight on skies trying to keep ahead of an avalanche and then only get away due to hitting a jump at just the right time and angle to jump to a safe location? No, there was no safe location. I had to shoot down a chopper and use the wreck as a shelter to let it pass over me before digging myself out. It actually helped a great deal. I was reported dead by my enemies, which allowed me an even greater level of stealth than before. When people guard graves, they look outward, not inwards. What about the pilot? They were wearing my disguise. What happened to the pilot? Do I have to spell it out, dear girl? I suppose not. He did wake up as I was taking his boots. That made things awkward, I will admit. Philip notes as Renari slips off the air bike and he powers it down entirely before taking out the key. Now then, Miss Tumblebriar, Miss Thornsaddle, Miss Dustcraig, meet Renari Stripe, engineer of the Overwhelming Order Station. Has he told you what he plans to do? Shelley asks. He wants me to introduce him to the rest of the engineering crew so he can convince them to help him crash the station into Lake Orthanega to cut it off from the others during a computer blackout. And you're all right with that? After last night, I'd be okay with helping him kill the goddess, Renari says with a smile as she looks over the others. Oh my, none of you have... Am I the first you've seduced? You, my dear, are the woman I broke a multiple decades-long dry spell. Dry spell? Dry spell. What brought it on? Age. Used to be an inevitable doom for all my people. But I've sidestepped that little annoyance. He remarks, Now then, shall we go inside and discuss things? You really weren't kidding. You have an entire base, Renari says in wonder as she looks over the operations center. This place is old, but it's the kind of old when things are made to compete for centuries. That's right, Philip says. Now then, seeing as Matha and Gweno are here, that means that I've passed Shelley's test, haven't I? You did. We're waiting for the other girls to show up, and I've called in some favors to get supplies for the mess hall. Ah, it will be nice to have redundancies, Philip says genially. You've already ordered it all, haven't you? Mata asks. I have. I'm starting to think the movies were underselling things, Shelley notes. That and the people in charge of financing them were far more uncreative than the actual opponents I faced. I mean, really, start a war to cover it on your rag newspaper? No, it was more simple and more complicated at once. It was a war to sell arms and patents, Philip replies with a grin. But that's enough about the past. Instead, let us speak of the future. How many troops, walker pilots, and administrative personnel can we expect? After I looked you up, me, Martha, and Shelley had a think. We're bringing everyone in. We're going to need a place to hunker down and endure the fallout if you fail, and need to be ready to strike if you succeed. She says, capital. I've taken the liberty of getting a few devices. There's still a great deal of preparation to move to the actual big day. Some for the people here, some for Renari. Philip says, taking out a case larger than his torso out of a jacket pocket, from one that no one had been able to sense, despite sensing at least two in his jacket. Okay, how many hidden pockets do you actually have? More than you think, and the more standard sleight of hand nonsense, Philip says with a smile. Well, that explains why he seemed to have axiom pockets in those films, when he was ostensibly supposed to be in cruel space. You would be truly shocked just how much you are able to smuggle in a properly tailored suit, Philip says coyly, before bringing out a long, thin knife. This stiletto, for instance, isn't even cloaked by axiom. And it's made of tritite, I see, with a kutha knob in the— Pardon me, may I? Martha asks, reaching for the blade, and Philip flips his grip and offers it to her handle first. She takes it, and it suddenly dances upwards and shoots through the air with ease, its profile so thin that its speed makes it nearly invisible. Very clever. You can kill a lot of people with a toy like this. That's the general idea, Philip says, plucking the knife out of the air, and Martha's eyebrows climb up. Fast hands, my dear. Very fast, she agrees as he hides the knife again. Now, I've spoken to the other squad leaders and sergeants. 500 girls are willing to come back. Those stations have an armed force of over 1,000, though. 2-to-1 odds with the technological and home field advantage in their favor is not something I'm going to march anyone into without a very good plan. And if they're entirely lacking in active communication, confused and potentially unarmed, he asks her, potentially unarmed. Their weapons are biocoded. I haven't cracked it yet and am unsure if I can. But if I can erase their profiles and their weapons, we can mass disarm them of everything but backup knives and emergency holdouts, Philip says. That would clinch it into an easy win. But you just said you're not sure on that. True enough, Philip remarks. However, if I can get their communications down, what do you think your odds are then? Well, a station is a series of rooms connected by lifts and corridors, meaning only so many soldiers can be in any one place at any one time. So their numbers don't mean much. Even getting surround, the area will be so tight that they can still only bring in as much firepower as us. But if they can't coordinate, and we can— She muses. I would like to know what you're going to do about Proton, though. It's used in so much and is both nigh foolproof and ubiquitous. How are you planning on getting around it? Nigh foolproof is not the same as foolproof, but I can't show you in this room. Too much in here uses Proton for me to give my demonstration safely. To the mess hall, Philip says before pointing upwards and marching out of the operations center. Wait, you actually have an answer? Madda demands as she follows him. Wait, you can't be talking about the Proton acoustic point. That's dangerous, Gweno protests. Only to Proton, hence why we're going to the mess hall. He quickly leads them through the base and then pulls out a large sack from his inside pocket and begins pulling similar bags out of it. Please place your Proton using devices in these bags. Otherwise, they're going to break. I know none of you have implants using them. Legally, at any rate. If any of you have a back alley implant that incorporates Proton, please tell me now. No one comes up with one as everyone takes a bag and quickly begins loading them up. Very good. The bags are also highly scan resistant. They won't keep out the strongest scans, but they'll need to be on most scanners to have anything about them deciphered. Consider them a gift. He then brings out a small, clear plastic container with a rice-sized chunk of Proton shimmering in it. Please observe, it's safely ensconced in the plastic and will be somewhat protected by it, much like the components of a communicator. He then draws out a tuning fork. On its handle is the numbers 35,000, 35,500. Who would like the honor of shattering the Proton, without touching it and without axiom? Renari holds out her hand, and he passes it over with a smirk. He nods to her. Observe. Renari strikes the tuning fork against the table, and the sound is beyond what any of them can actually hear. But after only a few moments, they all hear the sudden crackling as the Proton outright shatters, reducing itself to the consistency of fine sand. It needs to be precisely in that range, and a higher frequency will not do, and anything even a single hertz below it will not do either. But I have the forks ready. I just need to finish putting the devices together. You've made acoustic bombs that will shatter communications, Gweno says in awe. Were you and that Armor Amy character just one person? No, she was real. Then she was gone. She was family and one of my best friends. Then enemies of the crown and country took my cousin and one of the smartest women I've ever had the privilege of meeting from me. I'd like to think I've done her proud with these bags and tuning forks. So she was Amelia Bernadette Masterson, my father's brother's daughter, dear sweet cousin, and between the two of us, we were the terrible burn cousins at family reunions, he says in fond memory as he opens his sound shielding bag and retrieving his communicator. Still in perfect condition. How are you going to get this? Oh, sweet goddess. That's the virus. It's going to blast that sound over every single speaker. Correct. Galactic microphones can pick it up. It needs to be loud enough and last for more than a moment to truly shatter Proton. But you need to be a species like an Earthany, Sonir, Lopen, or Koiran to even hear it. And of them, only the Sonar can reliably produce the sound. So only a small percentage of the Vatras forces will be able to even hear it. Vatras Milena won't even be able to tell. Brahmastra might have a few, and Blythe will know something is going on, Matha says as she puts everything together. And Vatras Shun has a total of 4 soldiers that can actually hear these frequencies. To those that can hear it will be like a scream from hell. Those that can't will suddenly have their communications die and everything go blank. By the time they get their analogs and backups online and unscrambled, one of the stations will be mysteriously missing and fingers will point, Philip says, and Matha shares a look with Gweno and Shelley even as Renari stares at him. There are still so many points of failure. I'm aware as I'm going to close off each one in sequence. How are you going to deal with the fact that a single thermal scan will detect that the Tri-Tite Lace Lake is suddenly near boiling because a fucking space station dropped into it? The scanners they have are inaccurate and infrequently used, and even if they are used, it will take less than 30 minutes before the icy cold water of the mountains pouring over top cools things. It will also quickly kill the steam plume, but not very fast. Correct. I need 20 minutes to pull off this heist. 10 to drop the station with a small enough of wiggle room, another 10 under the water for things to cool enough. The virus is calculated to last for an hour, but I have to assume that cut in half. Philip acknowledges. Which means that the station needs to be more or less directly over the lake as you have 0 travel time. When will that happen? Shelley asked. In 3 days, going by current patrol patterns, Renari says. 3 days to subvert an entire engineering crew to your side with the very real risk of death if they listen to you? I've done more with less. Even you can't seduce that many women that quickly. Seduction, nothing. I know how to make friends. Remind me to tell you about the time I was caught flat-footed, poisoned, and alone in Japan. That was one that didn't make it into the movies. Out of cruel space, into a wider galaxy, Part 32, for Newest England. I don't think a dinner for the shift that's going to be on when you hit the station will be enough to make them turn traitor. Renari notes. It's not the dinner. The dinner is just to get them all in one place I can sweep for listening devices ahead of time, or he assures her. Oh, sweet goddess. You're going to have an orgy, Renari says with her eyes widening. I don't make friends and builds bonds of loyalty with my penis alone. You don't? She asks. I do not. It's for special occasions. Oh, special am I? I would have wined and dined you like a proper gentleman, but with that yellow-clad clown barking more convincingly than any Koiran, or anything of canine descent, I had to bring out my more assured methods. Philip says, Are you complaining? Not at all, but I'm wondering how to get more, she says, and he grabs her around the waist, dips her, and kisses her full in the mouth. Her arms wrap around his back as she moans into the kiss with pleasure. Then, having forgotten to actually breathe, she runs out of breath, and before she can do anything, he senses it and sweeps her back upright. She just stands there dazed for a moment as Philip smirks at her. Will that suffice? Yes. Now then, I need to make sure we have all of them. The alarms on that station are on a backup analog system. If anyone gives the game away when command calls, we will have troops pouring in. Yes, incidentally, it's downright fascinating that such a piece of technology was developed outside of cruel space. It seemed very much like the kind of thing that would never even be conceived of beyond it. It's less so when you realize we equate electricity with axiom, So if something's cut off the axiom siphons, we need a way to communicate with the main source of those siphons without power. Ah, yes, that makes a great deal more sense. Thank you, Philip remarks. Now then, let's get to business. He leads her to one of his safe houses, a lower priority one. Yes, she may be borderline addicted to him at this point, but a 5-minute power nap with some axiom can fix that up. He has no delusion in his mind that she can easily still turn on him. How did you make so many so quickly? She asks him, and he grins. I've made more friends than merely fighters. Mechi, are you all right? Philip calls into the building, and there's a clattering sound, swearing in a language Renari cannot understand, but Philip scoffs in response to it. A gobe man rushes up. Holy hell, it's time? Almost. Our new friend here needs to see the fork bombs, Philip says, and Mechi nods before rushing off and rushing back. I still find the name somewhat silly. That's the point. Who takes a fork bomb seriously? It's why I painted them all and labeled them too, the gobe says, rushing away. How many friends do you have? Renari asks, and he smirks. Enough. I took my time choosing the world and people I would personally help. It's no accident I'm here, and it's certainly no accident I've chosen my opponents. It's why I'm going to win. I'm making things happen. I am choosing the pace of this fight, and I am setting the stage on top of controlling the battlefield. Yeah, fancy boy here is a scary one. You might be eye-fucking him as much as actually fucking him, but he's scary. Thank you, Mechi, Philip remarks as the gob returns with a matte black box. In small writing on the top, it says Fork Bomb in Galactic Trade. How did you meet? I was the engineering slave and toy of the girls working on a pirate ship. Let me tell you, lady, it's a hell of a thing to suddenly hear the ship comms give everyone a single chance to surrender in a dude's voice. The girls laughed, and they didn't keep laughing for long. Woo. Yes, that was a rather interesting time. You hear this guy? He's a straight-up paid pro at the understating things, Mechi remarks before scratching his behind a touch. Still smarting? Stop being so smug, I learned my lesson. And the lesson was? Shock pants are not a good idea if you're not into that. Is this something I want to know? All you need to know is that there's a very good reason we're only working with my own designs. Even if I found ways to improve it, Mechi protests. Bombs do not need plasma auto turrets, Philip says, but they keep people off your bombs if they find them. They also make them much easier to find. Yeah, but these bombs can make people look away. Look at it. It only shoots if it sees the whites of their eyes. The gobe exclaims in excitement as he brings out a housing. He slots the fork bomb into, and a pair of small plasma throwers extend off the top. Philip moves as he gets Renari and Mechi out of the line of fire, and then slips back up in the direction opposite of where the turrets are pointing. He grabs the barrels as they swing around and Renari deactivates things. Thank you, Mechi. As always, your exuberance is both your greatest gift and curse. Oh, come on, boss. Imagine how that would have gone if it wasn't us. Some nosy slag would have gotten it shot clean off, Mechi explains, and Philip sighs. Yes, area denial is useful, but not on the things that we want concealed and hidden quietly until used, Philip says. Perhaps if they were deployable, magnetized even, then I could have these upon the walls and ceiling if I so desired. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I can do that, Mechi says, rushing off. And double-check their targeting protocols. A weapon that shoots the wielder is only good in enemy hands, Philip calls after him. He's a very skilled builder and tinkerer. Quite dedicated, but very, very much going to blow himself up if not reined in. Did you really rescue him from pirates? I did. The remainder of their slaves wanted to be set free. The bounty and salvage saw them all home safely, and with enough left over for a more modest vessel to be purchased to facilitate Mechi's and my arrival. I see. I can't believe he didn't go back to his family. He made contact with them, but asked to go with me for a further adventure. The young man is eager to prove himself as something more than just a son of his family. I told him I had need of a technical expert capable of making a large number of exacting devices. He agreed to serve and has been my armory technician since. If I need anything built, I get a blueprint to him, and generally have it within the hour, Philip says, so long as he keeps his own ideas out of it. His ideas aren't bad, just not thought all the way through. A defensive turret wherever I want it? Amazing. A turret in places I want hidden and ignored? Not so much, he says and smirks to himself. He's definitely going to be getting Mechi to do some extra work. What's his name? Mechier. It's his full, legally registered name. But the pause bothers him for some reason. So Mechi, Philip remarks with a mild shrug. Not everyone has the same pride in their legacy and home. I'm sure. So these are the destroyers of the Vatros ambition. Mind if I look inside? She asks, and he gestures for her to do so. Now, how do I... The paint's covering up the access points. The sides pop open. Just force them to you. Mechi calls from the back, before there's a yelp of fear and the sound of a Go body hitting the ground and a plasma round eating through something. Excuse me a moment, Philip says, heading into the back room where the excitement is happening. As he leaves, she pulls on the sides and they pop out of frame, simply sliding away. She then holds up the fork bomb and looks into it. It's so simple. Basic electronics, internal antenna, a tuning fork and a striker like the old-fashioned alarm bells, just inside a box. She then examines one of the side panels and it niggles at her, the material under the paint. She runs her finger along it and nods in confirmation. Scan resistant. This whole thing is going to blend in with surrounding electronics and need direct eye contact to be sniffed out. She slides things back into place, and the box seems almost seamless now, but she can make it out at this point. Damn near mechanical. No wonder the little fellow is so wound up. Making these must have been nothing short of a bore. She then pauses and considers how she phrased that. It was so like Philip. He's already rubbing off on her. Well, that's that bit of fun dealt with. What do you think? Are there remaining reservations of taking these onto the station? Philip asks. Where's the camera? She asks curiously, and he points behind her. She turns and sees the small indicating light directly above the door inside. Right. Well, these things aren't dangerous to people at all. Maybe if some Erementa tried to modify their crystal hair into protein, but that's just the galaxy's fastest shave bald. I don't know. They could still be dangerous, Philip remarks before miming throwing the thing. With an arm like mine, just about anything is. Yeah, huh? And when you drown someone in their own toilet, tell me, Mechi says as he climbs up onto the table and takes the fork bomb from him. Well, this is about 43 years late, but I have done just that. What? Missions get hectic and move very fast. You don't always have the choice of making you kills quick or clean or sanitary for that matter, Philip says before shuddering a little. No, that was not my best moment. Right. Moving on from that, how do you intend to actually subvert the rest of the engineering shift? That's 50 girls, including me. How are you going to get 50 girls to be willing to give their lives in an insane plan to topple the Vatros in a single night? Why ask when you can see it for yourself? Because I'm an impatient bitch who hates being led around by the nose? Renari asks. Okay, fine. I like her, Mechi says, and Renari reaches over to flick a lock of hair on him. He gives off a squawk of protest and flails for a moment before pointing. You're on the list! Then he rushes off into the back room. Well, if nothing else, this will be plenty entertaining, Renari remarks. But seriously, spill. Must I? You must. But what about my charming mystique and air of mystery? Ditch it. Very well. I plan to first get everyone to trust me and relax. Then I'm going to explain to everyone about some plans I found. They're not too secret, but they're not public. None of that. What did you find? The Vatras each have their own plans for Lavaron. All of them are terrible. Each one is eager to see them done and have been building resources for it. I have copies of the receipts for it and everything. Okay. The Empire also has its own plan for when one of the Vatras takes control of Lavaron. They're going to blockade the world and cut it off from interstellar trade. They see it as inevitable and are already ready to move. And if you take power, it will confuse them long enough for me to set up a negotiation with them. From there, we at least have a chance for this system to not be impoverished further. And what happens if a Vatras wins? To say these women plan to be despotic is to undersell it. Vatras Milena is downright reasonable compared to the others, with her desire to have everyone not reptilian as a second-class citizen at best. Blythe is almost cuddly, as she will only crack down with the laws with as firm a stomp as she can manage. Brahmastra wants to set up gladiator matches to fuel her bloodlust and seed the wilderness with dangerous megafauna. And Vatra Shun? Renari is almost afraid to ask. She's a pervert. I know that, but what's she planning? Everyone that ever worked for this witch knew she was a dirty woman. Her most favored officers were always men and always paraded around as prizes. She sat in no seat that didn't have a man under her, and one to each side, always clad in that massive conglomeration of yellow. The loathsome bitch loved the color. She will dissolve all marriages. Every man on the planet will become her own personal husband and sent out on loan to the filthy plebeians. Her words exactly, he says, putting up the finger quotes as appropriate. What proof do you have? She asks, and he withdraws a data pad. I have enough copies for everyone. Those are the files I found in the personal palaces of each Vatras. How did you get in? With as much stealth as I could muster, and blessedly no one has ever thought to even try to do that before, so their security has long been lax. There are thousands of guards on the borders of those estates. And strippers are waved through, Philip remarks, and she pauses, considers, thinks, and then gets off that train of thought entirely, because the idea of any the Vatras fucking Philip makes her want to hurl. And then she outright gags as that line of thinking throws up a final image of him with all four. Moving on, why didn't you share this before? I didn't need to. The soldiers in our Endeavor are patriots. They do this for the love of Lavaron. If there is a way to throw down the Vatras that won't ruin this world, they will stand with me. You need different motivations, both to bring you to the table, but to keep you here as well. Your word will bring others to the table, and this information will keep them here much as it has you. You think I'm completely on board? She asks, and he nods. She can't refute it. He's right. Things are bad, wow, but one day, even without this man poking at things, one of the Vatras will win the stalemate, and then Lavaron changes forever. Then it becomes a prison. Damn it! She leans forward into him, and he embraces her gently. There, we have a plan. We're going to win, he assures her. Out of Cruel Space into a Wider Galaxy, Part 33. For Newest England, it was almost painfully easy for Renari to get everyone to agree to come. The most major male contact any of them, having been those uptight bastards in Shun's corner, was wearing on everyone. The biggest issue was that every engineering girl had heard about it in short order, and it had passed to the soldiers, which also led to the admin and the moral officers. She had kicked the problem to Philip, and he had done something that appeased everyone, and he had only this select group here, Renari and the rest of her shift. What he had done, said, or promised was not known to her, but there were smiles on every woman's face, and a few scowls on the men, which led to so many questions. But she would have the opportunity to ask him, especially as the small hall the man had rented out opens, and he invites them all in with a smile and a bow. The girls rush in eagerly. The heady smell of delicious foods wafts through, and they all pour in. There are two long, massive tables set up, one laden with mouth-watering dishes, the other with delightful desserts, including fountains full of something brown and smooth-looking. Tables and chairs arranged all over as he waves them in. His excuse of starting a new catering service and wanting to make sure he has all types of people down pat, with his assumptions translating to a free dinner for the girls of their station, was a good excuse. Damn, you called it Renari. This looks amazing, Eclipsa says. Okay, so the Earthani's proper name is Eclispe, of silver stars set against the darkest night. But that's too much outside of trill speech. See, you can trust me. I know what I'm talking about. Renari says to cover up just how little confidence she feels in herself. The more time she has to think, the more insane this all is. Yes, being around Philip makes her feel like the impossible is just a matter of putting the effort in. But away from him, she had scanned herself, heightened hormones and nothing else. He just has that kind of presence. The assurance that there is a plan and everything is lockstep with it. She watches the man introduce himself to each girl and proves he knows their names, hobbies, and preferred foods, as he quickly gets everyone comfortable, situated, and talking with each other. Ladies, just a moment of your time. First, a short prayer to whatever faith you hold. Then after that, an announcement. So the next minute is dedicated to what we believe in. After that, I will speak again. He declares, and after a minute of silence, he claps his hands. Thank you. Now the announcement is for an announcement after we've all finished eating. So don't rush out the door when you're full. Linger, lounge, and enjoy yourselves, please. With that, he starts showing off that he's not the only non-engineering expert here, as numerous plates loaded with favorites float towards people. A plate of her own favorites shows up in front of her, and Renari lets out a little O sound. He has cloaken allies. Cloaken that are either streaking or dressed in the very expensive clothing that phases out of sight with them. She's then distracted a little as she tries to remember exactly what that kind of cloth is called. There is a specific name for it, but it's at the tip of her tongue. There's a swell of laughter as Philip tells jokes, entertains, and his cloaken allies do the same. Renari can count 4 separate instances, maybe just 2, using both hands to carry plates. Having fun, my dear. A little shocked at how you're doing this. Oh, everyone loves a silly story, appropriate anecdote, or simple acknowledgement. It's the funny thing about people, so much more complicated than engines. But no matter how many books you read, it always boils down to a little something extra. Philip says, you just said something I'd say, but your way? She says, and she nods. Oh, that's how you're doing it. When in Rome, my dear, he says before flitting off to continue prepping up the engineering shift. As the dinner winds on, Renari hears that one of the 2 cloaken seems to be a man. At least if the rumbling, teasing voice is anything to go by. Ladies! Ladies of engines and great aptitude, a few minutes of your time, please, Philip announces after a time, and everyone turns to him. The lights dim except right above him for a moment as a pair of cloaken fade into visibility to either side of him. We, your hosts, would like to thank you for joining us tonight. To my left is Helen Shinescale, to my right is Disti Orson, my trainees, and I am Sir Philip Bernard Masterson, Knight of the British Crown. There are some whispers, and he holds up his hands. If you please be so kind as to allow me to continue. I am still answering questions left unasked. Things quiet down, and he nods. Thank you. Now, as many of you are curious as to why a knight of a foreign crown is here and speaking to you, it is because I need your help, or at the very least, your agreement not to interfere with me. It's funny. I am prepared to go clear through entire armies. But it is you who have the greatest chance to stop me. Stop you from what? Helping you. Philip replies, for you see, doom is approaching. The Vatras grow in power. The Empire prepares to deal with them. And each of the Vatras has horrific plans for you and yours. And if any of them gain dominance over the others, which they are constantly competing for, then the Empire will blockade this system and trap you in with the monsters. There is a silence. However, I'm not here to deliver bad news. I'm here to tell you that there is hope, that there is a way out. I am going to set the Vatras against each other in a self-destructive war. I am going to break them against one another and then kill the winner. Then I will make the Empire back down to keep transportation and trade to Labaron. Are you insane? That's the kind of thing that gets someone killed to talk about. I've swept this room for any listening devices. We're clean, we're clear, Philip assures the panicking engineer. Do you know what your employer in particular plans for this world? What the Yellow Witch wants to do the moment she no longer has competition to worry about? What? She will dissolve all marriages and place every man alive into sexual servitude. Anyone that wants a family, a daughter, a lover, all of it will be through her. Any sons any of you are blessed with. Brothers, uncles, fathers, cousins, friends, all of them. In her twisted, perverted grasp, there is a silence as he starts to walk around the room. Blythe isn't much better. She intends to enact a totalitarian police state. You think it's bad now? Where you fear for listening devices? Imagine it far worse. She's actually been tossing around the idea of mandatory implants. She hasn't committed to it yet, but she is considering it. Brahmastra would have you all fight for your life on a day-to-day basis, and Malena is almost boring in her plan to strip the rights and privileges of every non-reptile she can, which means that out of everyone in this room, Vera, Caitlin, and my trainees, Dis and Helen, would be the only ones who are allowed to own property, or move cities without a permit, or own a vehicle without a mandatory tracker and disabling device, among many, many other restrictions. Incidentally, half of your toolkits would be regarded as illegal, welding, plasma cutting, things like that. Do you have any proof? Proof? Of course, proof that can't be easily faked, falsified, or altered? No, Philip remarks before walking right up to the woman who's been questioning things. But I ask you this, has anything I said about the Vatras truly been unbelievable? Has it been at all out of character for them? You've worked for Vatras Shun for 8 years now, Jeffica. What do you know about this? She looks away. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. She looks up and scowls. No, that's exactly the kind of thing the crazy bitches would do. But what are you going to do about it? Huh? Mr. Knight from another world. What the hell are you going to do about it? I will get them to kill each other, and the ones left standing, I'll finish off myself. You said that already, but how? I've been provoking each of them and pinning the blame on the others, up to and including intercepting an odious man that you're all familiar with, one Jericho Dawn. He's currently in Milana's grasp, and she has hints of either Blythe or Brahmastra trying to frame the other. Is that why we heard Shun screaming in frustration earlier? Likely. I have that effect on enemy commanders. And what kind of proof do we have that your idea, whatever it is, won't make things worse? How do we know that you will somehow be better than the Vatras? Honestly, I fail to see how I could do worse, Philip remarks with a smirk. But in all seriousness, I have many ideas for Lavaron, such as a completely ignored cash crop that can be sold well over the galactic market and grows so readily and quickly you all consider it a weed. With that kind of capital rolling in, not to mention the sheer mineral wealth of the tritite deposits, there will be innumerable infrastructure and public service projects that can be built, repaired, and maintained. To say nothing of arming and training a fully loyal defense force for the planet. And what about us? Do you have any personal political concerns, or do you just want the basic platitudes and promises? Platitudes and promises? Oh, you know what the silly lords and soft-handed politicians say. We mean to do better by improving our prospects in such a direction, Philip says before smirking again. I promise that nothing I do will be empty or a mere performance. In 2 days, I shall be hijacking the station you all work at and hiding it in Lake Orthanega during an information blackout my trainees will be supplying. Once that is done, the Vatras paranoia will spill over to and they will attack one another. Failing that, if that somehow by some dark miracle does not set them off, I have more, however, we will not need it. You may not need it, but I need to hear it. What's your final option? A clone. A Quicklet-made clone of Officer Jericho Dawn sent to suicide bomb Vatras Shun. Whether it is successful or not, whether it is intercepted or not, the attack will be a step so far beyond Shun's ability to withstand, she is guaranteed to attack. Success or failure does not matter. She will kill herself or weaken an opponent too much for their other rivals to resist. Then it dissolves into a free-for-all, he says. And if that fails, I've been into each of their personal homes already. I'd rather they depleted their loyal forces and munitions. But if I need to kill them all personally, I will, Philip says before leaning a little closer to the questioning woman. Don't mistake me for some fool. I've toppled nations before. I've bested armies before. I have personally led forces into impossible situations and gotten them out. I have lived, I have loved and hated and killed and saved. I have dodged my own death by ever-slimming margins so many times that on more than one occasion I would have sworn I had died. He then leans back. The fun thing about all this is that I am in truth asking very, very little from each of you, or any of you. How can you steal a station without at least the engineering crew there? The engines are a Class 19 Sectress lift generator. They have manual overrides and basic readouts on the side. These readouts are available on the left side of the generator if one uses the main entrance to engineering. I just need that and only that from you when I get there. That's all. I do not expect to make a killer out of anyone. Certainly you can make my mission easier. But in the end, I do not need you to help me. Merely not to report me. That's it? Well, it means I'll have another hour of frantic sneaking around in preparation. Oh, but I only need you to ignore me for me to bring about the ruin of the Vatras. And what do you want out of us if we do agree to help you? Plant some devices around the station and then ignore me. You'll also get some lovely bags that will protect your devices from one of my primary attacks. What are you going to do? I'm going to destroy all communications on your station and then steer it downwards into Lake Orthonaga. Its cold waters and heavy tritite content will erase it from any scans that occur after the half-hour mark. And by all rights, it will look like a station simply vanished. That's insane! With the internal gravity and inertial dampeners, it will barely be noticed by the women inside the station. Then you have to face thousands of soldiers alone. A jaunty afternoon. Not to mention I've been making many friends. This is more than just us, isn't it? Many more, Philip confirms. All right. What do you want me to plant and where? Oh, I hate the Vatras. You mentioned brothers earlier. Well, I had one. Past tense, fully past tense. He had allergies, and Milena said that all Miak men had to be protected during another of their stupid skirmishes. He didn't make it. The only rations they had in the pit they forced him in had... She looks away, her face twitching in fury. And then every job you could get slimmed down and down until Vatras Shun was the only person who would give you enough money to live by. Yes. Do you want revenge? Not at the cost of my family or my home. We've paid enough. You have. Philip agrees. It's long past time the Vatras start paying the debt they've incurred. Then I'm in. I'm tired of being afraid. Good. Does anyone else have any questions? He asked the room. Silence. Very well then. Let me show you all my plan in detail so that when things start happening, you know what to do and what not to do. And what should we not do? Panic. You can pretend to panic, but actually panicking is a bad thing. Out of Cruel Space, Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 34, for Newest England. Sir? Dis asks. Yes, Philip asks. Why did you tell them all the plans so up front? Some of them looked pretty flighty. They could talk, he says. Does it have anything to do with us? Helen asks. Yes, to both of you, Philip says as he holds up a hologram that shows a compound before it switches to another and then another. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to lay specific bombs at these locations. The distractions and obfuscations are complete. Now it's time for work. You son of a... We're going to booby-trap their escape vehicles. That's correct. If no one talks, the plan goes off as normal. If someone does talk, then it will spread fast and all the Vatras will try to escape. You two are going to wire their escape vehicles to explode while I sabotage their safe houses tonight. Sabotage them how? A transmitter that will flash update all chemical scanners in the area to ignore a certain compound. An update to the devices is far from unusual, and then the commander suddenly dying from her own food that came up clean is going to be quite frightening, Philip says. You're just not interested in giving these women a chance, are you? Dis asks. Of course not. The only chance we're to give our opponents is a chance to surrender and spare themselves, be it their dignity, their lives, or something else. Something else? I prefer not to use hostages, beyond the occasional shield, of course, but it is a valid tactic. Philip confesses. Why is it that every conversation we have, I have more questions about you? Dis demands. That's the sign of the life well lived. There's simply so much in it. Now let's look to filling out your life, young man. I'm older than you. What's the phrase? Not the years, the miles? Helen asks with an amused look on her face. Something like that. Now then, you two, I have a bevy of useful tools and now what's wrong? Philip begins before pausing at the look on Dis's face. He's just embarrassed. He tried jury-rigging a chemical scanner, and it didn't work no matter what he tried. It did work. The problem is how it works. Scanners are completely reliant on axiom in certain frequencies, meaning that if people are trying to shield from a scanner, I can't just flip the frequency and suddenly see through whatever trick they have. I worked at it in my off time for the last few weeks and got a big steaming pile of nothing. Dis snarls before sighing. The only way to pierce those kinds of barriers is to literally pierce them or have a scanner so powerful it may as well be bombarding the target. And neither of those is the kind of subtle I'm going for. There, young man. If you can't figure out one way to do something, you look for another, Philip says. However, that's for later. For now, I will be supplying you both with the equipment and tools you need to accomplish your mission, and a few extras to test your creativity. What are the parameters? Stealth, total stealth. They cannot know you've compromised the escape craft. Now, what is the rule of stealth? The lesser the impact you make, the greater the stealth, Dis says. It doesn't matter. What you're impacting, you're always impacting something. No trick is perfect and no stealth is absolute. Or in other words, stay off plush carpets when you're invisible. Out of the water and smoke as well, Philip reminds him. I was trying not to remember that, sir, Dis says. Don't worry, it was a gentle reminder. We all need time to learn after all. You can relax. Oh, thank goodness, Dis says before fading out of sight. Perhaps not that much, Philip says, and a moment later the raptor-like cloak and uncloaks ever so slightly. He's mostly transparent. That's better. So what are we getting? Helen asks. She's relaxing herself and looks like Dis, but fully visible. Dis gives her a frown and she shrugs. Hey, we're different types of cloak in here, beyond the fact that you're an archipelago boy. True, but really, Dis says before sighing. May I continue, please? Philip asks. Both of them quiet down. Now then, both of you will require these. He hands each of them a cigarette case full of different-looking pens. The name on the side shows whose finger they can impersonate when you enter a password in. This will allow you to subvert the normal security measures. But do learn from my mistakes. Make sure the door does not have an axiom sensor directly above it, or otherwise pointed directly at the door. What happened? I tripped an axiom scanner not on the blueprints. I should have paid more attention, and that was after a random guard not on their proper route surprised me. Following both of those, I failed to realize that Vatros Blythe has an implant allowing her to communicate silently until it was nearly too late, Philip says. A flawless mission is impossible, but a mission flawlessly executed is easily doable so long as you're willing to think on your feet and move with the problems. And the difference is what you can control and what you can't, Helen says, and Philip nods. Correct. You will both be needing these, he says, drawing out a pair of briefcases, one for each of them. These contain high-end plastic explosives that, when placed under the personal seat of the Vatros, will detonate when sat upon. They use no axiom and therefore will go missing in the vast majority of scans. You both remember your bomb lessons, I hope. How could I forget? Helen asks as the memory of being blasted in the face by confetti and air horns every time she made the slightest mistake runs through her head. Very good. Both of you gather your traditional arms and meet me in the garage. I have a real treat for you today. It takes only 15 minutes for both to meet him down there, and he smiles fondly. They've both come a long way from a nepotistic hire to a now allied government and an abandoned girl from a moneyed family. There's a joy in teaching, in seeing how far they have come. His smile turns into a familiar smirk as he walks them to a pair of empty parking spaces. Welcome to your new personal vehicles. They are cloaked under all circumstances unless toggled otherwise and easily controlled by these. He says, holding to each of them a communicator. These ones have a drone program within them to allow the car to be driven from any angle and from any distance. There is a Pro-TN entanglement, so don't worry about jamming signals and enjoy. At Dis's touch, his car uncloaks and he starts fiddling with the settings until he finds out how to shift its colors. He flashes from a bright red to a deep blue to a green so dark as to be almost black before considering and then going with a jet black. The sleek vehicle revs up and he all but saunters towards it. How long until the mission, sir? I'd like to fully acquaint myself with my gear. We have 3 hours before you two need to head out, Philip says, and Helen rushes into her own new air car. Both of them take off without so much as ruffling his hair and quickly get used to their new cars. Dis licks his teeth as he waits for the soldier to finish inputting the password and finally gets a chance to glance through the crack in the door. He almost sighs audibly. There's an axiom scanner on the back of the door. Damn it. He needs to find another way. He does know one, but it's so full of guards on the regular that if someone stretches at the wrong moment, he's liable to take an elbow in the side and that will kill his stealth in a hurry. He slips down the corridor and looks for another way. His profile in the axiom is very, very subtle at this point. A person would have to run into him to be close enough to sense him, or be an adept that specializes in that kind of nonsense. But people like that are well-tracked, well-regarded, and well-compensated the galaxy over. There are signs wherever such people go, and none of them are on Lavaron, let alone in this single compound upon Lavaron. A door is flung open and a guard comes rushing out. He slips out of the way and she keeps moving, with someone unusual in her shadow. Then she suddenly stops and Dis has to struggle very hard to not crash into her or make a sound. She turns and he moves with her to stay away. The Uruguay woman doesn't have a tail currently, but the woman whirls and he ducks away before going for the wall. She can sense something is up, but can't detect him in any way beyond a vague danger sense. She starts padding around the area trying to feel for him. Her hackles are up. She's outright snarling and paranoid. Then she suddenly unslings her laser rifle and strafes the area. Thankfully, he's crouched down and against the walls, so he doesn't even have to move to dodge. Dis is painfully aware of the decamator, thick burn mark a hand's span above his head as he watches the Horgwa's eyes dart back and forth in her justified, but not yet confirmed paranoia. She then flinches and presses something against the side of her head. "Yes! Yes, I hear you, it's that!" she begins to say as Dis outright stops breathing. "No, I can't see anything, but..." Then things break his way at last. "Last night, ma'am. They take my edge away, ma'am. I'm not as effective on the antipsychotics." Deep inside to some small part of him thanks his ancestors loudly, as they're clearly pulling hard for him. The laser is pointed around again as the paranoid soldier starts looking around. Did she fucking hear him praying? "Fine, I'll take the stupid tablet," the woman mutters before reaching into a pocket and pulling out a plastic bottle. She uncaps and shakes out a pale green chalky tablet. As this happens, Dis lets himself start breathing again, very, very slowly and lightly. She tosses the tablet into her mouth and chews before audibly swallowing. She then screws the cap back on and pockets the bottle again, as she visibly calms down in front of him. Meaning whatever she took, it was powerful enough to work right away, or the placebo effect was on his side as much as the ancestors. "It's like a blanket's covering my head," she complains and then sighs. "I'm heading down to the area. Yes, I know. I'll get moving, ma'am." She walks off at a much more sedate pace, this time without even the paranoid inkling about the very real threat directly behind her. The threat she's giving an outright tour of the base to. Helen had struggled at first. It was exhausting, annoying, and distracting to stay invisible at all times. Trivial to imitate other people, but someone being found knocked out would give up the ghost that something had happened. This had to be total stealth. No knockouts, no souvenirs, and no dead bodies. Everyone, everything, and every position had to be accounted for. She had to leave less of a trace than a figment of someone's imagination. Without the neuralizer, she wishes she had a neuralizer. It would make things so much easier. She'd settle for a noisy cricket, though. A plasma cannon that small and with so much power its recoil sent you flying? "Yes, please. Thank you. And may I have another, sir?" Noisy crickets akimbo was something she wanted to do ever since she saw those movies. The lab boys were working on it last she heard, but it wasn't doing too well without shrinking tech being involved. Still, the upside of her stealth not being as easy as she'd like is that she was being made to consider and reconsider every move she made, and had positioned herself in just such a way to hear the guards in the security room talk things out. In time for her to rememorize the layout of things beyond the holographic blueprint she had studied. She knew how to get to her target. She had even calculated it would take about 200 steps, 3 doors, and a scanner to get past. She was ready for all that, except there was one problem. The door out of this room is closed, and the people in the room are nowhere near oblivious enough to not notice a door opening and closing all on its own. So she's stuck waiting, and waiting, and waiting like a chump until finally a Kruger woman all but shoulders the door open to have an argument with someone. Helen is safely on the other side by the time the shouting starts, and she has to resist skipping off as she's just been given a distraction on a silver platter. Out of Cruel Space into a Wider Galaxy, Part 35, for Newest England. Everything seems to be going as normal. There is nothing unusual, suspicious, or concerning about a routine check of wiring, cables, and piping around the station. So it's routinely ignored. That is the first mistake they make. But no one pays attention to the maintenance staff, so it's almost forgivable. Almost. In truth, most can't even tell the janitorial staff apart from engineering and vice versa. The stations had been in stalemate for so long that no one really pays attention beyond the morale officers who are in a constant state of power trip. Speaking of, they almost catch things. Almost is not close enough, though. "What is this?" Officer McGoogle demands as his tongue lashes out, grabs the black device away from Renari, and holds it between his teeth. Sir Philip had made a point of painting over the incriminating writing that Mechi had insisted on using before handing out the devices. It was just good practical sense. Coupled that with a few bundles of wires and components literally taped to the outside, and it looked downright incomprehensible. Well, he mumbles around the fork bomb. "Spare parts, all kept in a compact little case." "Spare parts?" "Yes, sir. It's an initiative where we keep the parts most likely to wear down or break down right near where they're needed so we can fix things faster," she says, and the amphibious officer spits the device back at her, and she catches it before placing it properly. The man then spits on the floor. "Clean that up. It's full of the disgusting taste of your stupid initiative," Officer McGoogle tells her before turning around and marching away to terrorize someone else. She stomps on the spit and spreads it before finishing up what she's here to do. Her time with Philip let her see through all the natural impulses she had. Doesn't matter if they're a man or not. McGoogle and his fellow morale officers are pieces of shit. She finishes her round and heads back to the main engines of the station. And there he is, barely visible and at the left of the main chunk of the engines. "Hello, Renari. Have there been any problems?" Philip asks with a genial smile. "None. Well, none beyond McGoogle being a twit. Again." "McGoogle. He's the Esong, correct? I've never met one before." "Well, if that twit is any example of his kind, then you're the better for it," Renari says, and Philip nods. "Noted. Now I have well acclimatized myself to this device. We should be in range shortly," Philip says with a smirk. "You still haven't said how you got up here so easily?" "You think it was easy?" Philip asks. "What did you do?" Renari challenges him, and many girls are looking interested. "Company," Philip notes and is suddenly gone. The door opens and Morale Officer Lyman marches in with 2 power armor bedecked soldiers. "Renari Stripe," the officer demands, and she freezes. He points at her. "Execute the traitor. She's tied into—" "Early works," Philip's voice says before suddenly a loud static sound echoes out of the speakers in the room, and then everyone feels the station jump. "We're under attack," Lyman shouts into his communicator, even as it starts to rattle as its inbuilt proton shatters. The device starts to flicker, and he focuses his gaze on Renari. "I wouldn't," Philip says, visible again. One hand operating controls in a blur as he holds a massive coil gun that's pointed directly at Lyman. "Who the hell are you?" "New management," Philip remarks with a smirk. "What?" "Brace," Philip suddenly commands, and everyone scrambles to grab something. Gravity stops being a thing as the station starts falling. "Right on target and right on time. Excellent." "Pay up," Dis says as they watch the star fall from the sky. A stack proton credit discs slaps into his hand, courtesy of Mechi and Helen. "I was completely sure he bluffing everyone, the crazy fucker," Mechi says in awe. "I really can't get a read on the mad bastard. He's training me, and I still only believe the wrong half of what he says," Helen remarks in mild awe. There's probably some kind of lesson tied into that," Mechi says before tilting his head. "Hey, you think he's using those turrets he had me upgrade last minute?" "Probably. What was the upgrade?" "Modified IFF. They go after armored targets only." The smell of molten slag, burnt plastic, roasted ceramics, and thoroughly cooked flesh fills the engineering room as Philip continues to hold Officer Lyman at coil gun point. When did you do that?" Lyman asks in horror as he struggles to stay balanced, as he's just barely on the cusp of weighing less than nothing. Philip is playing a merry jig with the inertial dampeners and giving everything special shifting attention to balance things out. Do you think you'll get away with this? Oh, little Lyman, I already have. Philip remarks with his smirk, and sheer rage flashes across Lyman's face. I will have you, Lyman begins to say before the coils on the gun begin visibly powering up. Threat received Lyman quiets down. Renari slowly bounces over to him, unused to traveling in microgravity. How long until the others get here? Renari asks him. A time? I'm afraid I can't be exact, as I don't know how well they're responding to the random assortment of anti-armor turrets I've hidden around the station. Philip answers as he adjusts the course of the station ever so and hits the jets to make sure it doesn't lose any of its falling speed, despite the correction. It's critical that no time is lost at all. How did you even get in here with enough time to set up turrets? Well, 4 hours previously, Philip thanked his lucky stars that Axiom was such nonsense, as otherwise compressing himself to hide inside that supply container for 3 hours would have been utter aggravation, to say nothing of cramping near solid afterwards. But instead, he slips out as limber and lithe as if he had just left the masseuse. And to think, most people only think of Axiom as a way to enhance their strength or stay young. No wonder adepts were so rare. Axiom's sheer ease of use prevented the average from learning creativity with it. He slipped behind a pallet of supplies that an automated drone was grabbing and hauling out to be properly distributed to the mess hall, and then grabbed onto the drone itself, hanging off the back and cloaking as subtly as he could manage. The hard part was over. At this point, the only challenge was trying not to get bored as the untested and borderline apathetic security. Nothing like people automating the tedious parts of their job to leave massive glaring holes in their security. Something he'll have to mix up. Maybe make it so the supply transports have zero atmosphere inside them. That would have definitely taken out this attempt to get on, but he would have found a way around that. Reaching the cafeteria means he has to start walking around in cloaking technique. But the fun thing about that is that his style is best done from a distance. Some were flawless when the soldier didn't move. Some only worked when moving and looked like a giant patch of heat haze when still. Some were damn near perfect like Mr. Orson's, but that kind of natural perfection led to sloppy stealth. So Philip was in the habit of switching them. If he had to go still switch to the one perfect at it. If he had to move, switch to that one. He then started laying down turrets that had a central comm unit tied to all of them, giving them a constant code that would keep them passive and in a compact form as he hid them in corners and the seams between ceiling and wall. Little places where the eyes glaze over ever so slightly as people look around. Then when the signal stops, everything goes to shit and the whole device is bound around a piece of protein. Without it, it dies. So needless to say, we have considerably less armored opponents to deal with, Philip concludes. You came in through the food delivery, but that's not rated for a living being to get through it. They don't drain the atmosphere, and they still shield it enough to prevent the supplies from getting irradiated, meaning it's perfectly fine for habitation so long as you're not eating through the oxygen like an asthmatic elephant, Philip remarks. Anyways, whether they're being gunned down or not matters little. The sheer width of the area I spread the turrets means that a single group has been whittled down over and over by them, or a large number of groups are in disunity. With communications out, as he explains, he inputs directions for a sudden counterthrust, and all the gravity returns as the momentum bleeds away and people hit the ground hard. Then something shakes the station, and then just as suddenly as everything started, it ends. There, done! Not quite so dramatic from this angle. But we are lacking windows. What have you done? Officer Lyman demands. The station is mine now. Vatra Shun will blame the wrong person? Yes, I know, Philip says as he steps away from the console. Is that it? One of the engineers asks, and he shrugs. Sorry, ladies, if you were expecting further excitement, but a job well done is a job often done without excitement. After all, we still want a station at the end of things and a life to live, of course. So no big crashing bang, no explosion. Well, except perhaps the one that's clearing away as we speak, hiding us and making sure that Officer Lyman's master points her finger in entirely the wrong direction, Philip says slowly, walking up to Lyman, still casually pointing the gigantic coil gun at him. Now, as for you, you have a few options here. Oh? If you want, I can simply take you hostage here and now. Knock you out, wrap you up, and be on my merry path to have my wicked way with the rest of the crew loyal to Shun. Philip explains, and an engineer gives out a cheer at the phrasing. He flashes her an amused and toothy smile to show his approval, and there's laughter. Did you mean for that to sound? Lyman begins to ask in a nervous tone. It's clearly sinking in that the power is not in his favor, and he's in a very unknown situation. Pray you never learn otherwise. Of course, there is another option for you. Another option? You put this on, cooperate, and earn my trust until I take it off. And you become part of something bigger, Philip says, retrieving a frequency-proof bag from inside his suit coat and holding out a collar. What's that? A bomb, Philip says. What? More specifically, this is a bomb collar. If you're willing to cooperate with me, I put this on you for insurance, and you help me take the station by standing down, converting and sabotaging your fellows. You then will join the winning side, my side. No, I will not betray my Vatras. I respect your decision and applaud your loyalty, Philip says before his hand moves and Lyman is out cold in a second. He then quickly ties the man up, puts Axiom scrambling binders on him, and walks him over to a spare seat and tapes him onto it. Try not to have too much fun mocking him, ladies. It would be very unsportsmanlike. I have a station to take from what remains of its forces. How many are left? Renari asks, and he smirks. I don't know, which is what's going to be half the fun of this. I know that there's a good number of non-armored forces on the station, but I also don't know how many of the armored forces survive Mechi's little gifts. We shall see. Now, excuse me, please. I'm going to take security and then start hunting. Any advice for us? One of the girls asks. Throw me under the bus, pretend I threatened you and had you all scared. Send them my way. Saves me from having to chase them down. And if that doesn't work, well, you have a hostage. You have a defensible position, and unlike the rest of the station, you have communications. You ladies are more than intelligent enough to put things together. Surprise me, he says as he leaves engineering with a spring in his step and a massive coil gun slung against his shoulder.